From a secure location in southwest Scotland, the artist known as John Morris has emerged with a brand new show. His aim is to enthrall, entertain and to leave you in awe with his brand of artwork. Tonight we present to you the series finale, episode 1, Midnight Mountains. This is The Artist. Tonight we're going to present to you one of the artist's biggest challenge as he recreates this painting, Midnight Mountains. He comes in with a 2-inch brush, titanium white and phthalo blue. He's adding a lot of water to this mix because this obviously needs to cover a wide surface area. We could think of nothing better than a big challenge to end series 1 of The Artist. And I want to take this time while the artist is laying down preparations to thank each and every single one of you who has tuned in each week so faithfully and loyally. If you've enjoyed this series, do let us know obviously in the comments below. It affects whether we come back for a second series or whether the artist goes into hiding. So here you can see that the artist is continuing to work side to side, no up and down motion. This is really key when putting together a painting. When paint dries, it leaves brush strokes. So what you want to do here is to have a nice soft 2-inch brush, load the paint on the brush, a little bit of water, and to be moving side to side in a nice fluid motion. Notice how the artist also isn't scrubbing in the paint. He's doing a really soft, gentle motion. All these things to pick up on when you're doing your own paintings. This is a really important part in the show. As you can see here, the artist has 3/4 laid blue. He's now adding titanium white on top to add another base layer of what I believe could be snow. If he's going by the same theme, it'll definitely be snow. So he's adding this base layer on to make sure that the foundations are perfect. He doesn't want to have to redo this one again. The artist now picks up a little bit of Mars black, phthalo blue, and a little bit of titanium white and begins working in that nighttime sky colour. From this angle we can see a little bit closer the amount of paint that the artist is using. Big canvases require lots of paint, hence why you tend to find that they are more expensive to buy the original artwork. An artwork like this would sell well into the thousands of dollars and thousands of pounds. The artist comes in with a small filbert brush. While the paint is still wet, he begins putting a bright light area. All he's done here is just to add a little bit of titanium white, and he's blending it on into the canvas. He puts in a second layer, which is a smaller circle, and then blends it on out nicely. The artist is feeling very confident today. The artist then comes in with a little bit of titanium white, just loading it on his finger, and then puts in the moon. Now he loads in a brush, as you've seen so many times before, with Mars black, a little bit of water, and he's creating some big mountains for tonight. Notice the shape of the mountains. As we've said over our weeks and our time together, the most important area on a mountain is the top ridge. If this is perfect and in form, everything else is good. If it's not, your painting can look sloppy right from the get-go. He then comes in with a little bit of Mars black on a 1/4-inch brush and just begins pulling down in the direction that the artist wants his paint to flow. How he wants to construct his mountains is all done in these motions and movements. From this angle you can see a little bit clearer just how the artist is actually physically pulling the paint across the canvas. For this painting, your mountains can be as big or as small as you want them to be. Once a little bit drier, the artist comes in with a palette knife, loads into a little bit of titanium white, and begins pulling down the right side of the mountain. This is the area that is closest to the moon, so it's going to be the brightest. The moon is emitting all that light, and he wants to capture that onto the mountains. I want to show you this technique again. I want to show you exactly how the artist is doing it. You can see here that the artist is basically applying very little pressure. He's just using his hand to guide the palette knife across the canvas, and the canvas is pulling off all the paint that it wants. Notice though that the lightness of the artist's technique here is leaving a little bit of rock formation showing through. This is key in making your rocks look real. Sometimes the blobbier the paint, the better it can actually work for you, as it will be bigger in certain areas and smaller in others. Okay, once all the right side and the light side of the mountains has been laid, then he comes in with a little bit of phthalo blue, a small amount of black, and a tiny amount of titanium white. As you've seen before over the last couple of weeks, when the artist has been painting mountains, he just takes a little bit of paint, pulls it onto the left. This creates a beautiful shadow colour. This is what brings the mountains to life and makes them look 3D. Tonight the artist will just be laying the basics. This gives you an opportunity, a really good opportunity, to practice your artwork throughout the week. Once again, from this angle you can see a little bit clearer wherever the light is emitting light. You can see here, there, yeah, we've got it, artist, I've got you covered. Wherever the light is coming from, whether it be the sun or the moon, obviously depending what time you're painting, that's where the brightest areas are going to be. The artist now picks up a 1/4 inch brush, a little bit of titanium white, and begins putting in mist. Again, nothing that you haven't done before. Making those little semicircle shapes, the artist is just working from one side of the canvas to the other, just blotting in a little bit of mist, or a breaker colour, underneath the mountains. He goes over it once again, just to add that little bit of fine detail, and to make it all look like it's disappearing. Once the artist has a sufficient level of mist, he begins fluffing it just by gently wisping across the top and the bottom of the mist. Remember to follow the directions of your mist, gently blending across. He then comes in with a little filbert brush, a small amount of water, and a little bit of Mars Black. Tonight he is using a reference photo, so you can see he's a little bit nervous. Well, it's hard to tell anything underneath the paint. Now what's this he's making? The artist begins laying in at the basis of land or a castle. The way that he's doing this is just to take the brush, hold it on its side, and begin wiggling the brush up and down to make basic rock formations. As we can see the development here, it starts to actually look like a castle far away in the distance. The artist then turns the brush on its side and just fills in that area. Nothing too stressful about that. Once you know the basic shape of your castle or building, it makes painting much easier. The artist adds somewhat of a straight line. Let's see what this becomes. It looks like... It almost looks like a bridge away from the castle. Wait a second, I think that's exactly what it is. So the artist has got a castle away in the distance, and then a little bit of a bridge. The artist just begins continuing to add the development of the bridge, and all we're looking for here is basic shapes. The artist comes in, reloads the brush, and then gently begins just blending out underneath. This is done either with a clean brush if the paint is slightly wet, or a small amount of Mars Black. The artist then comes in with a micro fan brush. He begins putting those little evergreen trees in. So again, we can see from here, over his shoulder, he taps on the brush, turns the brush on its side, and then begins working side to side just to create those beautiful cone-like evergreen trees. He adds a little bit of shadow underneath. Bear in mind that the trees are actual objects, so they will omit shadow. Omit, if you are looking for a definition, just means to cast. So trees omit light, trees cast shadow. And then the artist begins working a little bit more detail into his castle further and further away. Because it's so far away, we're just looking for a basic shape that's just happening out here. We're not looking for anything with too much detail. Now coming in with the two-tone technique to put in a few little rocks, white on one side of the brush and black on the other. The white faces upwards to where the moon is going to be, and the black faces down to where there will be shadows and darkness. This is a really simple way to put together a lot of little rocks and stones very, very quickly. He then comes in with a little, very, very small filbert brush, a tiny amount of Mars black, and then just begins zigzagging just away from the castle, almost where there'd be a little path that's just showing up far, far away in the distance. What that does is also add a lot of depth and distance into the perspective of this painting. It then comes in with a 1/4 inch brush, a little bit of titanium white, a small amount of phthalo blue, and then just begins adding some light snow on his painting. The correct technique for this is obviously wherever the moonlight is hitting, that's where your lightest areas are going to be. But there is, of course, creative license and creative freedom within this. Notice how the artist is using the brush to create the illusion of a hillside or snowdrifts. He picks an area and just begins working down the horizontal motion. Then he fills it on up, and before you know it, you've got a little hill. Adds a little bit more of phthalo blue, just to add a few little shadows underneath, making it all look correct. And even a little bit of moisture there. That's a certainly unique way to do it. He comes in with a little Mars black for where the furthest areas away of the snow would be, and the absence of light. Let's zoom in a little bit and see what the artist is up to now. He's putting in a few more evergreen trees. You've seen how we've done these before, a little bit of Mars black, a little bit of water, and just creating a small line at the top, the corner of the brush, and then begin working down to build almost like a cone-like shape. This is a really simple and easy way to create a nice sized forest fairly quickly. It does require some patience, however. Once again he touches, it begins working down. If you find that the paint is running out on one side of the brush, just turn the brush over. Notice how the artist is also varying the sizes. If you've seen in our perspective class, you'll know the importance and the technique to doing this. The further away something is, the smaller it's going to be. The larger something is, the closer it's going to be. The artist here reminds you to also put the shadow underneath the trees, again creating the illusion of the moon omitting the light. The artist now comes in with a little bit of phthalo blue, a small amount of titanium white and a small amount of cayenne blue. Begins working a few little zigzags here and there of what looks to be the start of maybe a frozen lake. This is all exciting. You can see the painting unfold literally before your very eyes. Continuing to work in that side-to-side motion now with a filbert brush, you can see how things are coming together. The artist has now used a combination of a little bit of green, Mars black, titanium white, cayenne blue, and phthalo blue. Now the artist is using a very specific technique here. Why do you think the artist is adding white to an area that he's just painted blue? Well, the answer is simple. If you saw last week's show, you would know how the artist is creating almost like snowdrifts. What that does, that makes the water look deeper than it actually is, but also makes it look as if it's further away. Because now there is land on top of the water, it makes it look as it should. The water on the bottom, the land on the top. Notice how the artist is creating some beautiful little snow here, beautiful little land, just by those simple techniques. You can create your own worlds and everything that you want on this canvas. There is really nothing to worry about. The artist comes in with a little bit of titanium white, this time a tiny amount of phthalo blue, and begins now scrubbing in some snow. Going back to the beginning, you can now see why it was essential that the artist cover the canvas in a few layers of paint before beginning. He then begins working on the right side of the canvas. And just developing things the further on down he moves. Okay, Mr. Artist, what's next? He then comes in with a little bit of phthalo blue, titanium white, Mars black. This makes a grey-blue kind of effect. He's adding a small amount of highlight onto the canvas where the snow is darker. He's disappeared from our sight. Oh, there he is, he's back. Okay. He comes in with a filbert brush, Mars black, and a small amount of water. Let's see what he's going to get up to now. Okay, we've got a line. We've got... looks like a giant boat. But no, that wouldn't make sense. What could it be? It's a bridge. So the artist is putting in the basis of a bridge here. Now it's important when painting in objects like this, like we've said so many times before, paint them in black, leave them to dry, and then when you put the highlight on, the colours will just pop straight off the canvas. With a small amount of water, Mars black, the artist covers in the basis of his bridge. Now at the moment it's just a basic shape. It will develop as time goes on. The artist is now creating a few little zigzags for what I can assume is going to be almost like a cliff or I guess you'd say drop. He wants to create the illusion of a 3D effect. We're going to show you in its entirety how the artist puts that together. Creating those zigzag lines which are really, really straight. My goodness, the artist gave us a smile. That's not something you often see. Maybe because it's the season finale. The artist is creating those zigzag shapes. Now remember, as we've talked about in previous classes, the way that this technique works, and to work it correctly, is that you go straight and then straight down. So for example, if you take your finger and move it straight across the screen and then just go straight down, that is the kind of shape that you are looking for. Almost like I guess you'd say a half square shape. The top part of a square. The artist then begins developing it some more of those little snowy effects that we have on there. And all he's doing here is just adding a little bit of grey just underneath. On a filbert brush, filbert brushes give you really, really good control. And now he's just pulling straight down, as you can see, and that begins creating those awesome effects that we were talking about earlier on. It makes it look like the water is actually deeper than what it really is. This is a form of optical illusion. If you ever want to study optical illusion art, this is a really good technique to get under your belt. Again, the artist is just pulling straight down as if there was a rock face or cliff face there, and is just developing the painting as he goes along. The artist will do this on every side that is visible. So as you can see, the ones where his hands are on the left side, they are all visible, and the ones on the right, there are a few there that are visible too. Do not do this technique on sides that are not visible, otherwise the illusion loses its meaning. The artist now comes in with looks to be a 1.5 inch brush. Again, it's the same technique, it's just this works a little bit quicker. The artist then comes in with a filbert brush, again using the same technique, and begins working the top layer of the top half of the canvas, creating that lightning effect once again. This is done, as we've said, with a little bit of titanium white and a little bit of water. Water helps make the paint flow much easier. Again, that's only applying to acrylic paint. For oil paint, it would be turpentine. Again, using that same technique, all the artist is doing is just pulling straight down using that filbert brush. And just like that, it is so easy to change a painting. In 23 minutes, you've seen how the artist has taken a painting that was completely done, but he wasn't happy with, and changed it entirely. And with that, we're going to stop for today. We hope you've enjoyed episode 1 of the season finale. Join us again next week to see how this painting finishes up. And as always, we invite you to like, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching The Artist.